I'll call this meeting to an order at 6 p.m. on August 11th. Roll call, Blake.
Here.
Robert, it's gonna be late. Merle,
Here.
Glenn,
Here.
Kelsey, here, Crystal,
Here,
and Vice Chair Jenny is here. We'll stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any public comments? Are there anybody who'd like to make a public comment?
Did you want to agenda? What order? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, Glenn.
Yep.
Agenda consideration, all over the motion.
So moved.
I got a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, now we're ready for any public comments. Diane, were there any? Nobody? Okay. Board communication, we want to recognize an extended field trip for our middle school outdoor school, September 30th through October 3rd in Newport. Hope everybody has fun on that. And then OSB elections are open for a OSBA Board of Director position. Do we need anybody, Diane, from our group to, if they're interested?
Yes,
Do we have to?
so on that link that with the announcement in there, so like last year Merle was interested, I think you were more on the LPC side of things, but. The link that's in the agenda there, if we nominate someone. Then they go to that and fill out the candidate form.
Has anybody filled out the candidate form or is interested in filling it out?
No, I have not, and I don't think I'm up to it this time. I tried, well, I never attempted the board on the LPC.
Okay,
I think we still have time probably when we maybe do it, but I don't think I will.
okay.
What's the deadline?
I think it's the 30th of September.
Okay, so we
30th
have
of
one more
September.
regular meeting.
We have
before
one more meeting,
One or two meetings before then.
one.
I did receive an email and phone call from a member of the Salem Kaiser Board who would like us to nominate him for the Marion position, which I think we can do. He has been a chair of the board, Salem Kaiser, and it's on the board. But they have nominated another person and he would like a chance to run. So I just put that out there. I know him. And I don't have negatives about him. I don't know him real well. He's a psychologist. He practices in Salem. Has been on the Kaiser board now at least for his second term. And Glenn knows him. Maybe he can speak.
hey, Meryl. Hey, actually, why don't we put an action item if we're gonna do any, nominations for next meeting? And then if you wanna bring that forward, you could. You good with that, Jenny?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it sounds like we have time for a deadline if we feel like we wanna do that.
Yeah, let's put that on the board, meeting in September for board business.
Okay,
And he did say he would be willing to be here at the next meeting and meet with us.
okay.
Hey, put that on our notes and we'll follow up on that.
Got it. Any other comments on our board communication? Okay, hearing none, let's move to our consent agenda. Do we have a motion and a second? Anybody?
I'll make a motion. We accept consent agenda as presented.
Thank you,
I'll second.
thank you. All right, business and budget.
Sorry, need to take a vote.
Oh. Oh, I'm sorry. I see,
Sorry.
No, thank you for keeping me.
Sorry, Jenny, I'm late today.
So
Yeah,
ask for discussion and then.
yes.
and
Is
then-
there any discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, all those in favor say yay, aye,
I,
thank you. Opposed, hearing none, motion passes. Okay, now we're ready to move on to business and budget.
All
Thank you.
right. Well, we are gonna change the order here a little bit, and so, Kim has a presentation on the Grimm Road and Donald Road property discussion, and just for the public's knowledge, that this is, just an opening discussion about property that we own there on the northern boundary of the middle school property. And this conversation started over the, a couple times over the course of last year with North Marion Fellowship approaching us to say, you know, what are the future plans of this property? Is there any interest that the district would ever plan to develop it or potentially sell it? And so I did invite Pastor Jim Twilliger here this evening. And before Kim shares a few pieces of information about the property, but the North Marion Fellowship has rented the facilities here for a long time, so I thought, Jim, if you could just say, you know, how long has the church been in partnership or renting the facilities from the district? And maybe a couple of what you would see as win-wins in the relationship the district has had with North Marion Fellowship.
Yeah, sure. Well, we've been actually renting the facility, for 18 years. It's crazy, how long that's been, but since 2007. And, we just, obviously, I don't know if there's any board members from originally there, but I know there's some that's been around for a while. Since I get this opportunity, I just want to thank the board, obviously, and especially the principals, because they're the ones we work with. But you guys for allowing us to meet there and pay rent and be able to use it for obviously our different church activities and ministries. And we started it 18 years ago. The reason we did that was because we wanted our family, some of you know us, but we had 3 kids that went through North Marion from K to 12, and all of them are graduating now. But we were a part of this community for quite a few years. I'd say I think it was 10 years before we started the church, and I was a pastor in Canby. And we wanted a church in our community with the community. And so that's really why we did that. We wanted to be partners with people and to really serve this community. And so we thought, what better place than the school to do that? And so we've been able to partner in many different ways with the school district. It's been a lot of fun. We do different things with it for instance, coming up in October, something we've done for 18 years, I believe, is we call it Faith in Action Sunday. It's the first Sunday of October, and we go out and we have church, shortened version of church, and then from 11 to 1, we go out and serve the community. But always the beginning we just did for the schools. And so we still do. So we talk to every principal and often the superintendent and say, hey, what are different projects? And then we do them, you know, it's been great over the 18 years just to do that and to see, you know, us be able to, and we've had a few that have come from the school, a few principals in the past that have come and helped and joined us, which is great. Something that we've done almost since the beginning as well is some of you know about a children's ministry called Kingdom Kids. It's on Wednesday nights during the school year, basically October through April, beginning of May, and it's for kids preschool through grade 5. And it's obviously it's kind of like what we just did a week ago, our summer Kingdom Kids, but we do songs and singing, a Bible story and a snack. We did dinner for a while, but that since COVID we haven't picked it up. But it's something that's just great for the kids. We average about 30 to 50 kids that come that night, and something we started about 5 years ago. Again, talking to the principals and to the superintendent at that time, a new thing we call Growing Families. And it's part of the mission for our church, but it's really focused upon reaching out. And so for the last number of years, we've basically focused on 3 things for families: parenting, marriage, and finances. And so basically, we offer 2 classes a year and invite people from the community. This last year was something that was a highlight for me. I was able to work with David Sheldon and Kimberly from the primary school, and they helped me with the Love and Logic class. And we did that together, then Kimberly did a Spanish version. So we did one in the fall for in English, and then in the spring, she did one just in Spanish, and we did a financial peace class. So, and, you know, pastors, and go on and on. But it's been a privilege. One of the great things that also we've been able to do is, because we set up and take down almost every Sunday except for the summer, we're able to work with the schedule. But during the school year, there's a number of different things, at the high school, especially the primary school. That is, we have a lot of chairs, and so for big concerts, that we're able to, you know, my wife, most of you know, my wife works in the primary school, didn't do that at the beginning, but anyway, she knows of different things that go on and says, hey, we've had chairs, we have 200 chairs and nice chairs for parents, right? Rather than kind of the benches sometimes, especially the primary school that you're sitting on. So whenever we can, we bring those in and set them up, help set up and take them down and all that. So it's just, you know, that's something that we want to continue to do, even as we talk about like rebuilding. This is really, one of the reasons we are asking this is because we want to stay as close to North Marion School District as possible. If we have to go to Hubbard or Aurora or Donald's like that, so be it. But we want to be in the center. That's why we chose the school. We are North Marion Fellowship. So anyway, enough talking. But that's our heart. And especially the school board, if you hear things that need assistance and you need some, you know, we're not a large church, about 120, 130 people, but we've got a lot of great volunteers who are willing to help out.
Thank you, Jim. So kind of like we had, you know, North Marion Youth Athletics here, so I think it's always important to, you know, when we have partnerships with different agencies or organizations to kind of highlight those. And so with me being new last year and the new business manager coming on and to find out that we have property and whatnot, we thought that, well, before we go any further, that we would just share a little bit about the property. And this is not a board action item. It's really wanting to know from the board, are you interested in us looking into what it might be, what its value might be, what it might eventually take to eventually even consider putting it on the market for sale? And there's a lot of meetings and a lot of discussions to happen between now and then. This is really kind of, all you really need to do is give me a thumbs up to say, yeah, we'd be interested in learning a little bit more about what that might be. Or if the board is kind of in a position to say, we are not selling that, we've made, you know, we want to keep that as a possible investment, whatnot. That's just helping me direct my time, the staff's time a little bit more with a little bit of your input. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kim.
I appreciate this, opportunity to share. It's been a learning experience for me as well, because of course there's a lot of history in a local community like this around the properties, but what we found is back in 2017, the district did purchase 3 separate tax lots totaling a little over 8.3 acres. That purchase price was $300,000. Of course, there were some closing costs on top of that, but at the time, there was visions for expansion of extracurricular activity fields. There were some drawings developed at that time, which are linked on the memo as well. And since that time, the development has not occurred. The properties have been used for essentially some. I tend not to want to use the word staging, but like during the bond project, there was dirt relocation, and so some soil was moved from the high school site over to that site, stored there, and then able to be relocated back after the construction was done. And so, as Dan was sharing, we really just wanted to present the information to you about the historical thought that at that time that it could be used for the expansion of facilities. Again, specifically, the thought at that time was parking and a couple of ball fields. And just kind of wanted to be able to bring the information we do have to you to help, decide, is this something we'd like to invest time in to bring more information to you for more in-depth discussion and generalized direction. So again, on the board memo, there is a plat map linked. There are the 3 separate property details. These are all available for your own viewing, either through here or through the Marion County Tax Assessor's Office. The bottom link there, though, if we don't mind pulling that facility mock-up, just to give you an idea of what at that time. This has topography in it, so it's a little more difficult to see, but we can see on the left hand corner, which is the corner of Grimm and Donald Road. The intent was for some parking with baseball / softball fields flanked on each end of a potential soccer or football potential field there in the middle. Since the purchase, there has been an easement by Northwest Natural that would impact some of the parking spots that face Grimm Road. Northwest Natural has, I believe it's a 75-foot by 20-foot deep, 75-foot wide by 20-foot deep easement. And you can see some of their structure, if you will, if you go up on that road. So there would be a little bit of an impact on that, but this was the intended one of the intended thoughts when that investment happened. So currently, all 3 properties are zone EFU land, so exclusive farm use, which is very limited to either income producing farmlands, schools, or religious facilities, churches as well. So that is our understanding. Of course, everything would be vetted through the county. We did not invest a ton of time until we got board direction on if this is somewhere you'd like us to focus our resources, i.e. time at this point.
Okay, thank you. I'll go round robin and ask what you guys think. I'll start with Glenn.
So my big thing is zoning, that's a big hurdle, yeah, maybe. So I didn't know how much, kind of forethought has went into that, but it's, that would be probably my biggest concern is that, and then the second part of that would be logistically, how would you offer this property in sort of a double blind way? So that it was not appearing to be favoritism, you know what I mean, from a sales standpoint, so that would be my only 2 questions.
Merle?
Well, I was going to ask what the present zoning was, and maybe I just missed it.
EFU.
Exclusive
It's
farm
EFU,
use,
okay.
it is currently EFU
So it would
land,
need
all
to
3
be,
separate.
What's the term, variance or?
I remembered from when we
Decision by
purchased
the
the
county.
property. There was some discussion that we would not even be able to put buildings on it, even though the district owned it and it was part of our campus. So that would be one of those hurdles that probably would be want to flesh out pretty early on.
The other question I would have is how much of that property would the church need to do what they would like to do? Is it all 8 acres or 3 acres or 4 or 5?
I think if we got to a place where we thought that we were interested in selling it, we would also probably be working with some form of real estate type of person to what would maximize the district's benefit from it. So it wouldn't necessarily be, trying to steer it towards what benefits the church necessarily. And I had that conversation with Jim, is that we would put this up on the market. So I'm not sure, what someone might advise us, it would maximize the district's benefit. So we would be, if we got to that place, we would say, we would be leaning on someone who knows how to maximize the district's gain on that.
And to tag on to that is the number one, this is a taxpayer asset. And that asset would be, one of the key pieces that would need to be considered in a board determination is what is the value of that asset on the market, but what is also that value of the asset having adjoining property, in an area that you could be limited. So there's assets in dollars and there's assets in the non-dollar value as well, so.
And that's a consideration depending, churches and schools, there's no tax. That revenue that would come to North Marion, but if it were allowed to have a commercial property on it, for example, or light industrial, then there would be, but with EFU, it doesn't sound like chances are too good, but you just have to ask. I don't know. I did have someone approach me a year or 2 ago about doing a school garden. And the administrative assistant up at Oregon City she's really into that kind of thing. Oh, I'd be glad to come down and help you do that, but it seems like that might. I didn't know we had the property at the time. That was a possibility or not. That's just a kind of a
Yeah.
side issue.
Blake?
With my profession in agriculture, it's kind of in farming a farm next door, the value of that is very high, logistically being close by, and so having a piece of ground for the school right next door would be kind of hard if you already own it to wanna pass up not knowing the future. And so it's always it can be a good exercise to go down the path and see what's there and what that could look like. But it would be probably difficult to want to pass on it, but to sell it, but it'd be something to at least. I don't know, it's having that next door and already paid for is kind of a big deal, so.
Kelsey?
Yeah, I agree with Blake. My other thought was, what would that do as to our budget? Cause they are leasing from us currently, right?
Yes, that would be part of what we would be bringing back is, yeah, what a potential, analysis of that could be. Now leasing, of course, if you have somebody who's been a fantastic partner and doing that, but they are needing to potentially expand, you could be looking at maybe a double negative if you don't sell the property and lose a lease. So, that would all be part of presenting that information. Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely more questions than answers in the process. Water rights and well potentials and all that kind of thing. There's a lot of questions about, and so that, again, your questions about zoning and all these pieces, we just felt like it was important to get the board's vibe first of, do we want more information or let's focus
I don't know
our.
if the property currently does have water rights.
It's my understanding it has nothing, no water rights. But again, that's with very preliminary look, right? There are no existing wells, from what we've been able to gather. There is 7 Up Creek going through, but I believe it's more of a irrigation / overflow / flood mitigation canal. From what I've been able to gather.
I'll ask Crystal. Crystal, do you have any comments?
I think I'm probably more aligned with Blake and his insight. I'm wearing my district hat right now, my school board hat, not my personal hat. And I think having, I don't know, I'm torn by it. Cause I would like to see, like, will this land ever be usable for the district? Or would it be accessible for the district to even put like a bleacher on? Because at the time when they did the bond, this was a commitment that we did to a master plan. But if it's not that they'll ever let us put parking lots or fields there and that sort of thing, then I'm not sure that it's something that I necessarily want to keep. But my biggest thing is, I don't want to make a decision to sell this property to fill a funding gap. If we sell this property for any reason, it should go back to capital expenses. This is not a fix the bandage type of a situation. This is a capital-based decision. And so I would be interested to see if county would want us to, or allow the school district to ever build on that, like in a 5 or 10-year plan. And if their answer is a hard no, then I think we go down that route. My other question to the school board is this the best use of our new business manager and our superintendent this school year?
Okay. Merle,
And
do
I'll
you
leave
have
it on
another-
that note.
Not idea, but I.
Okay. I'll agree with Crystal's last sentiment of, I don't think it's a good use of your guys' time and resources, given all the other conflicting and higher priority things. I agree with Blake, if we have an asset, I don't think it makes sense to necessarily look at getting rid of something, you know. I'd be up for tabling a discussion on what we can do with that property later, but I don't. Makes me nervous selling property when we're already so small, you know.
Well, I think I got the feedback that we needed, and I agree, it's probably not the top priority of our office right now. So, but we would, you know, at some point in time, maybe take what we might feel is the next step in learning a little bit more about it to bring more information back to you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to item number 7, we have board.
We have actually, so
Oh,
Kim has.
we actually went, out of
Yeah,
order.
so
Okay.
yes, we went out of order, so now we're backing up.
I am 0% right.
I'm gonna head out.
Can I interrupt really quick? I'm so sorry. But I just want to take a moment to thank Jim Twilliger for coming to the board.
Well, I was gonna thank you guys, actually. Yeah, no, I appreciate, and like I said, we just wanted to throw it out, not throw it out there, but we wanted to just let you know of the interest, right? Because you don't know until you explain it, and then just the privilege that Dan gave me just to share. A thank you to you guys, honestly, and as I told Kim and Dan, if you hear whatever murmurs, I said that, murmurs, you know, of anything that has to do with us, which they've done, just come talk to us, okay? I mean, you know, it only takes one person to get upset, or why is the church meeting there, or why are they doing this? We're, obviously, everything's approved by the district, the school board, or especially the principal and the superintendent, but all that to say, we love it here, you know.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting us
Thank
be
you.
here, and thanks for letting me come today.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Crystal.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna have a financial preview report.
Absolutely. So, wanted to give you kind of a preview of what I see for the future for North Marion's, financial updates. I think it's important for the board to receive, information on a periodic basis to help guide your decisions. So if we come to you and say, are you interested in us looking into, you know, the value of a piece of property? You know, having information about other financial pieces. If I come to you and say, you know what, we're really having budget concerns because we're spending a lot to repair a roof and we're gonna need to replace a roof down the road, you might, you know, that can help influence other decisions. So that was only an example. I'm not giving any kind of foreshadowing on anything, but wanted to give you an idea of what beginning in September financial reports could look like. I think it's important to just kind of let you know, my approach is that you should be receiving a financial report that gives you an idea of where we are relative to our budget and where we are relative to prior fiscal years. So while this is only an example, this is probably going to be very similar to what I will be providing. This is an example from another district. These are not North Marion figures. But what I feel like is important for you to see is where were we at this point last year in our revenues and in our expenditures? There are certain lines in which our budget is 90% spent by July 31. We want to make sure we're paying our liability insurance day one. We want to make sure we're paying all of our prepaids right away. However, payroll, for example, our largest expense, of course, is you know, paid out throughout the year. So we have little bits of payroll in July, little bit more in August. And then, of course, we have it spread throughout September through June is the majority of that. So I really just kind of wanted to give you a preview. If they are technical and will be provided more for a resource for the board on a monthly basis. And however, it will allow us to point out any situations in which we may have unfavorable reports. If revenues are coming in under projections, we're going to talk about what may be impacting that. If expenditures are coming in over projections, we're going to talk about what could be driving that. And more importantly, what do we need to do? And that is what this report is important to provide to you is if we need to make an adjustment to the budget that the budget committee and the board had approved last year. We need you to be able to see the how and the why and where it's going to be adjusted from. So There's no action at this time. I just wanted to kind of give you an example of what you'll be seeing, and we will be happy to work with the board to make sure that that report provides you usable information, because if it just feels like a bunch of numbers on a page, then I'm not doing my job. I want to provide you the data you need to make informed decisions. So, perfect. Any questions on that piece?
I don't know if it's germane, because since this is not North Marion figures, but it provoked the question for me as to what these various sources are. I understand the state school fund and general fund, but then there's local sources, taxes maybe, or others, and intermediate state, federal, other.
So that's an excellent point, and this particular example is a little bit different than what I've used in my past, where I like to actually list property taxes instead of lump sum local taxes. So I will take that into account, because we can be as granular as we want, or we could be, have things in groups. So in an example like this, I would anticipate that district put their they may not have, that may be construction excise tax. There's a lot of pieces that go into these, and they're actually defined by a state document. It's about 200 pages that tells us exactly how we're going to code every piece of accounting work. But I will make a note that some descriptors, or either that or a key somewhere that explains local sources include X, Y, and Z.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Blake? Robert? Glenn?
Just a question, when's your next state revenue forecast out? Or
The state revenue
One-
forecast.
Yeah,
that
so
would be-
there was
that
the
would be-
May bad news, so it's gonna be
September,
September,
or-
it's probably gonna be, it's gonna be the quarterly revenue office, right, comes out with that, so. Yeah, we'll definitely be holding our breath to see.
Could I hear September 30th, like they right at the very end? I don't hold me to that.
Exactly, yeah. All I know is the last one came out the day after my last budget was adopted.
And the other question is, how's the transition going?
It is great. I'm really, really amazed at a lot of the pieces that are in place here. We definitely are working to keep up. We have some reduced staffing right now in the office, so that's been a little bit of a piece, and then just a lot of movements. I will tell you that having been through it previously, there's a lot of tax on your business and human resources department after a reduction in force because of the movement of your staff. And I absolutely am conscious of the impact on our buildings. That impact is felt in every single department. And so as you're constantly moving and shifting and adjusting pieces, it's a lot, and but I'm really impressed with what's in place here, and our administrative team, our staff, everybody has just been phenomenal. When I have to say, who is that person again, because you get to know your people, right? And so that's been my biggest piece of getting to know the special tricks and cases and stuff, but absolutely thrilled to be here, so thank you.
We're trying to kind of streamline those HR and business mechanisms and bring them into alignment together. So for instance, if there is a posting for so resignation happens or something happens and we need to post a position, previously it was, well, you just emailed, and so then email is great for communication, but it doesn't necessarily keep things really organized versus our internal systems have the capability of having one of our principals submit a job requisition and indicate whose place is that person filling, or is that new revenue, or all of those things, so that everything can be captured in one location and not remembering, well, where was that email? It was over here, I think I know where it was at, and that sort of thing. So trying to improve those internal processes. So.
Kelsey, do you have any comments about this report? Crystal, I don't know if you see it, but do you have anything?
Nope, I'm good.
Great, thank you.
So we have, last week, or actually, so it was August 1st, we were notified that we received a grant from the state. And so Des is gonna come up, and while she's coming, on Friday, we also got an update on some federal grants, because you were gonna give an update that said, we don't have any updates on federal grants, and then on Friday, we got an update.
Of course, yes, that link is also available to you on the board agenda. There was an update on our federal grant funding. We have four, we'll call it, four of our six federal grant buckets have been finalized as of right now. Based on those that are finalized, we have a almost $10,000 positive variance to what we budgeted for those grants to what's actually coming in. There is still one that is in preliminary status, the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. That is still in a preliminary status. I am hoping we might see a little bit of a increase in that to get us closer to the budgeted amount. And then another federal grant that is actually received through what they call flow-through dollars. The Willamette ESD receives the grant, the federal grant, and then passes through our proportionate share. That amount is also still pending. So we are very pleased at how our federal grants have come in. There was a lot of, unknown for a lot of time. We in the industry kind of talked about it being a crisis of confidence. We had, just really had no idea which way it was gonna go. So we're very pleased that those programs that are so critical to serving oftentimes our underserved populations, those programs are coming through and do not anticipate needing to have any serious budget discussions about things coming in under where we projected. So appreciate that.
All right,
Yay!
Des, take it away.
So this is really exciting news for our district that we were awarded this grant. It was a competitive grant, so we had to go out there, make the best plan, and we were awarded, I don't know how many they did in total. They had told us initially they were going to award between 30 and 50 grants. There were only 100 schools or districts that were eligible, so we were one of the 30 to 50, whichever they did, that got selected, so we were really excited about that. I'm gonna give you a little bit of information because we're moving forward really quickly with the processes for this grant, and so we wanna make sure that you are aware that we received it and what's happening. So this grant is aiming to advance literacy skills, including pre-literacy, reading and writing, with a particular focus on serving children experiencing poverty in Oregon and the highest need schools. Part of the reason we were eligible of that 100 school districts that were eligible was because of the students that we serve. This grant is designed to serve kids birth to 12, so through their entire life in our school system. So the allocation looks like this will be about $750,000 total over the life of the grant. We will get some money technically from last year, but they didn't award it to us until right now. The application was until spring, so they're calling it rollover, and we will have this year to spend it. So this year we have a total of $300,000, and then after that, we have a total of $150,000 a year that we can spend. And as I said, it hits on birth to grade 12. It goes into 3 buckets of money. So 16% of the grant needs to go towards birth and pre-K. 42% of the grant has to go to kindergarten through 5th grade, and 42% of the grant goes through 6th through 12th. So requirements of the grant, these are the kind of generic requirements. We have to participate in some ODE facilitated coaching and professional initiatives. We need to do ongoing professional development within all of our schools to all of our staff on early literacy as well as adolescent literacy frameworks, which the state put out. The early literacy one was driving our early literacy work, and then the adolescent literacy framework was developed and released last spring. And then we are going to develop and implement a district-wide literacy instructional plan. We have to have that done by 2027, I believe, and we're going to deliver intensive supplemental explicit reading and writing interventions as well as acceleration supports. And we're gonna work to coordinate K-12 staff participation in our literacy program. We also have to engage and coordinate with families and caregivers in supporting literacy development. We need to align our K-5 literacy instruction with our early childhood educational programs. So that includes our preschool as well as working with other daycare providers and preschools in the area to help create better through lines into our program. We're gonna strengthen early literacy, language skills, literacy development, and school readiness for our young kiddos in our pre-K programs. And we're gonna implement high-quality instructional materials for English language arts with Fidelity. So year 1 through 5, these are the two big ways we're spending the money. Every year, the big part of our money is that we're gonna hire a district literacy coordinator to support district initiatives. The scope of this is so big and needs a dedicated person who can really focus on making sure all these initiatives are happening, deliver the professional development, be in classrooms, etc. So we are really excited to bring somebody in who can have that as their focus. They will work underneath me in making sure that these programs go into place and continue to see positive growth. And then year 1, because we have that influx of money, so the 150,000 per year covers one person basically when you have their payroll and associated costs. So year 1, we'll have an influx of money of basically another 150,000 that we can spend. And so we'll use that to make some purchases like getting a good assessment. We can use K-12. We're looking at STAR literacy for that. We are already using that at our intermediate or our primary school and seeing really good uses of the data. We've been sharing that data with you. So we're gonna use that as well at our intermediate, middle, and high school to be able to gather better data about where we are at and how we can better serve kids. We're also gonna look at a data collection tool, because right now we get all that data and it goes into spreadsheets and then we manipulate it ourselves to figure out how to best use it. And it takes a lot of manpower. And we'd rather have that manpower in our classrooms, working directly with teachers, not crunching numbers. So EduClimber is a program through Renaissance, which runs STAR Literacy. And it basically is a program that allows all the data to feed into a central place, groups kids based on where they are having struggles according to the assessments, and helps us do interventions for them. And I think, let's see. Okay, that's it. So any questions? I told you I was gonna do a short and sweet today.
Blake?
With this program that runs for 5 years, when does it renew? How does that look for, if they were to come in and say, okay, I know I have a possible job for 5 years, but what does that look like in the future?
We don't know. Right now, this is federal funding that the state of Oregon received that they're pushing back out. So it's possible that the state will come back and say, okay, we're gonna extend this funding with our own. It's possible that there'll be other funding through the Department of Ed at the national level. Or we then have to, within that 5 year, decide how do we adopt this into our general fund budget and make a funding available for that. The last piece of it is as part of the application, it says per grant funding, like this job is dependent on grant funding. Yeah. Robert?
Who will do the hiring?
That will be Dan and I, and then we'll probably look to see if we can grab a couple of principals who will be part of that hiring process.
And it's an in-district only posting, and so we'll be interviewing this week.
And it's in district only based on our collective bargaining agreement, because we had layoffs and rifts, how we have to do that process.
Merle?
I'm not sure if I heard right, but I think I did. And I applaud pushing as much of that grant as possible into the classroom and the focus there. It just seemed to me in reading over this that much grant money comes with strings attached, and you must do this, you must do that. And I wonder how much actually filters down to our focus and our goal, but that sounds good to me.
Yeah, great, thank you.
I know you don't have a crystal ball, but are you expecting gains in literacy this school year out of the additional resources and kind of focus on it?
Yeah, that would be obviously our hope. We know that we were already starting to see some really positive gains, you know, incremental but positive and going in the right direction, our K-5. What we're really excited is that this is the first time we've had something where it's like, we can put some focus at 6-12. And we know that that is a spot where we just really have been lacking and not seeing the growth that we need. Both, you know, on a number of different levels, but specifically around how do we help our content teachers really understand disciplinary literacy and how, as a social scientist, how do I read as a social scientist? How do I read as a scientist? How do I read as a mathematician? Like, those reading skills are really specific and are gonna help students across the board. And then, of course, how that intercedes with like language acquisition in general and vocabulary development. So I'm really excited that this, I think, really allows us an opportunity to look K-12 when we have really focused more on early literacy to begin with.
Crystal?
I'm good.
Kelsey?
I'm good too.
Okay.
Thanks.
I think it's great. Thank you for everybody who was involved in applying and getting this grant successfully. So my question is about the pre-K, like prior to pre-K, because this is for
Yeah, birth to pre-K.
like, what happens? What's the goal? And maybe that's part of the development of like the outreach and the identifying kids pre-K
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, there's some of that we're gonna be looking to ODE for help and whatnot. Some of it is direct outreach, like how are we working with community organizations who are aware of the kids within our community and how do we connect with them? We're looking at like, how do we connect with daycare providers? We know, I was talking with someone just the other day that like the North Marion School District in general, and including Woodburn in a lot of ways, is kind of a daycare desert. We don't have a lot of established daycares. People do it through homes, through parents, through, you know, relatives, friends, exactly. So how do we then just advertise ourselves like, hey, we're gonna have an evening where if you're a daycare provider, you can come into the district and we're gonna give you some strategies that you can be teaching. And then a lot of it is how do we think about ways to connect directly with parents, and whether that is through mailings out to the district, et cetera. How do we help families understand different literacy strategies to support literacy at home? So, because it's a lot of different layers, so it can be that direct outreach as well as just like, here's something you might not have thought about, mom, you're at home, you're a stay-at-home mom with your kiddo, have you thought about these easy strategies? Here is a way you can sign up for text messages through us to get at-home strategies, which is actually a technique that came out of the What Works Clearinghouse, of like a really successful way to help parents learn strategies, little things like that.
Yeah.
So we're really excited for the potential. Like, this is a spot where we can get creative, I think.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you, Tess.
All right.
All right,
We have one action item on the agenda, and that is to essentially amend the action the board took in March, where the past practice of the district was that contract teachers, the board action was a 1-year contract. And then when teachers come back in the fall, they get each teacher gets a contract, and typically that contract stated that it lasted a year. And later in the board meeting, shortly after this vote, I'll give an overview of kind of the contractual processes that are outlined by the state. So what's linked on the agenda is essentially exactly what the board voted to renew in March, with the change being that it's through June of 2027. And then we also did remove the names of those people that have resigned, so that obviously they're not returning because they've resigned from the district. So it's simply just to put us in alignment with the state statute that's linked there on the agenda.
great, do we hear a motion for that?
Like a motion, we amend the contract, the annual contract for teachers to align with ORS 342 dot 895.
Second?
I'll second.
Thanks. All right, any discussion? Take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, district.
Who seconded
operations.
that?
It's Kelsey.
Kelsey, thank you. All right, so with that, I would like to, and I'm getting all turned around on my agenda here, got messed up here. So I know where we're at on the agenda is to welcome our new high school principal, Nathan Stanley, to give what we are terming the Strengths and Opportunities Report. So, welcome, Nathan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me tonight. So over the course of the spring, I took several days to visit with teachers and staff at the high school for really two purposes. One, for them to get to know me and vice versa. And then the second piece was for me to kind of get some qualitative data about the school, what was going well, what they would like changes around, other things like that. And so if you want to go to the next slide. And of course, we can, strengths and opportunities. I think one of the things that we were looking for as I was asking questions, and so, these were 15 to 20-minute interviews, so pretty short. But, the questions that I asked were, what do you want me to know? What do I need to know? What advice do you have for me? And whatever I could do to get people to kind of, share what was on their mind. And a lot of it was positive. And what I think is really interesting is as challenging as the end of last year was for the staff, that the amount of positivity that they shared really speaks. And I think that's one of the strengths that comes up. But it was really interesting that there were some definite themes that came up, both from a perspective of, what was really good and what people love about this place and that school, to some things that maybe aren't necessarily bad, but if we focus on can really have a force multiplier, so to speak, for the school. So if you want to go to the next slide. So the strengths that came up were community, and the staff repeatedly said that the community that they serve is a tremendous positive to working at North Marion High School, and the personal feel, the small setting, those sorts of things were all things that came up over and over again. They also said that the relationships that they have, and we have a lot of teachers that have worked elsewhere, and they said that there's a unique nature to the relationship, the student-teacher relationship in particular, that they felt that they know their students so much better than maybe some of the teachers, the experience that they have at some of our surrounding, some of our neighbors. Teacher dedication came up, and teachers are sharing this. And so, but they really felt like their colleagues really went the extra mile for a lot of their staff members, and that's something that I've heard for their students. That's something that I've heard repeated from other stakeholders. Student potential, the theme kept coming up about like the students are capable and they're capable of more. And that's something that they really wanted to push on is seeing maximizing the potential of every single student and our student body as a whole. And then the final thing that came up, which was really interesting to me, I had a staff member, I'm gonna paraphrase the quote, but he said, the staff can be really stubborn, but if you come to them with a problem, they're really good at problem solving. And so I think that's something that Lindsay and I have been talking about figuring out how to process issues that, some of the issues that we'll see on the next slide. Involving the whole staff as opposed to just, you know, the two of us making a decision or talking to a few staff members, of getting the whole staff involved in a process for how we take on challenges and issues. So the opportunities that we found, one is that I think that the building not being a very old, that it provides some geographical challenges in that the main office is in a spot that there aren't a lot of chance interactions with staff. And so something that Lindsay and I have discussed doing next year is branching out and probably operating out of other areas of the school than the main office. There are times, obviously, that, you know, for confidentiality and other situations, being in the main office makes a lot of sense, and having a connection or communication with the main office is important. But something that I started doing the last couple of years is I have a mobile desk where I roll around, and one, you learn a lot about the school from not being in an office. Surprise, surprise, you know, but you know, by being at the end of the hallway to being in one of the little alcoves where students hang out, being able to see student movement patterns as well as running into teachers. And I think that you know, Google purposefully sets up their office settings so that people run into one another. They call them collisions. If you've read the book, The Culture Code, that's one of the things that they talk about. And so I think Lindsay and I both want to be very visible from an administrative standpoint, and be some people that are out and about and very present with both students and with staff. Communication, I think that I talked to a friend of mine who's a principal in a high school in the area. And I talked a little bit about communication and a plan that we were developing to make sure that we maximize the use of our meetings that we have, our staff meetings, and our written electronic communication. And then to make sure that we have feedback loops put in place so that we're able to get information back. And so those are that's really an emphasis that we have. We've been talking about the best way communicate with not only with the staff, but with students and with our stakeholders at home, our families. One of the questions that I always ask, and it's funny, the answer that you get is, you know, like, we want the information, but then we get overwhelmed with the amount of information that sometimes can come, especially electronically. I have children in the North Clackamas School District, and there are times where it can be overwhelming, the amount of emails, and this is what I do for a living, you know, and so I understand, you know, people that with their jobs and families and other things going on. And so we really want to, as far as the family communication, really get some feedback on what's the most effective means of communicating. And sometimes, you know, it's better to over communicate than under communicate, we know that, but kind of hitting that sweet spot so that we don't get unfollowed or whatever. In another district, the district I just finished working in, there were parents that would block the phone number of the school for the auto calls and some other things like that. So we don't want that, but we do want to kind of zero in on the most effective means of communication with our staff. So something that I think it came up as something that needs to be worked on, but I think is really cool. And when I talk to other principals, it's unique. In probably, so it probably should be on the strikes, but one of the things that came up with something that the teachers thought we needed more of was school spirit. So, and I paired that with staff morale because that came up a lot, but you know, I've been doing this for a while, working in large comprehensive high schools and medium-sized comprehensive high schools. And oftentimes the staff is more concerned about other things other than the morale of students. And that I thought that that was really cool, and it was really one of the fun things about those meetings. That I'm like, this is really cool. I talked to the Tigard principal and she was like, that's incredible. Because it's really unique. And so something that we're coming up with, we actually met with 2 student leaders today to talk about some things. Tucker Brock has shared a lot of things about some things that the school has done in the past that we might be able to bring back. And so some school spirit, some staff morale, that's a major goal of ours. That's not something that goes into a school improvement plan for board approval, but it's something that I think, if we're really gonna talk about a theory of action, is that if it's a place that on Mondays, people are ready to go back to work or go back to school, a lot of the other things will take care of themselves. And so that's sort of a theme underpinning some of the work that we're trying to do. Process optimization just means that we just want systems and procedures that make sense and are efficient. And then and that everyone's on the same page. That is something that comes up. Some of these are not unique to North Marion High School. I'll just say that when I left Tualatin and I was talking with some people about some things that we were hearing from staff feedback, that a lot of them are the same things, communication, let's get everyone on the same page, those sorts of things. The final thing was about student expectations. And again, that was just having a comprehensive and consistent response and enforcement of school rules so that everyone knows what's expected. And, we have high expectations for all of our students for their learning and their behavior. And that's it.
Thank you. I'll go round robin. Blake.
Do you feel like the school morale or what did you gather on ways that could improve staff morale?
So from a staff morale, and I think that it's not uncommon, to be honest with you, I think post-COVID, there are a lot of staffs that feel very similarly, because education, public education in particular, went through something, and we're trying to get back to where we were before. In terms of how we feel about our jobs. And so one of the things that we have started to do is come up with a calendar. So we have a 12-month, 9-month calendar of how we can demonstrate appreciation for teachers, reinforce the core values that we have, so recognize both staff and students for doing the things that we think are really important in schools. Because I think often, you have student of the month and some other thing, honor roll and some other things like that. But oftentimes, some of those other things that are really important in schools don't get recognized. And so finding ways of doing that, we're kind of working on that to kind of set it up for our instructional leaders to help us flesh that out a little more. And then opportunities for the staff to socialize both in school, whether it be a chili cook-off or a potluck lunch, on in-service days, or even, activities that are outside of school. Those are some things that we're gonna try to do.
Interesting on the feedback loops, but even more impressive to hear that you want to be with the students and then you don't, obviously that feedback's important, but when you're there experiencing it yourself, you can assess those situations versus being told about them.
Well, in my experience, they have, there's something about having a policeman living on your block. That patrol car parked outside has an impact on student behavior in hallways. And so I found that whatever people would say when I was in the hallways, looked really good. So and so I think that that's something, and it does, oftentimes, especially with some roles, when I had a lot of my role being student management, I didn't get to know a wider section of the student body, and we get to the end of the year, the senior award night, I'm like, I don't know that kid, I don't know that kid, and so like. Getting out of my office at Tualatin allowed me to learn, get to know a lot more students, and then. In turn, they knew me a lot better, so it's a win-win,
Great. Yeah, I like that whole visibility thing too. It reminds me when I was in high school back in the 80s. We had this cool teacher that I just never forgot because he always carried around these challenge coins. And he put a challenge to you. And then he wanted to see, pretty much give you like 24 to 48 hours to do that. And you either want to hear about it or see it. But it kept everybody engaged and always, and that's what, yeah, that was a really cool thing. So, yeah, I like that whole idea.
Pearl?
Would you want to comment on the athletics of the high school and what things look like for the coming year?
Well, I think that we have some areas to work on, but, I think we're making the right moves, and, I'm really excited. With, Tucker Brock's ownership that he's showing, I mean. He's been, communicating with coaches and, other athletic directors and. Interviewing, people for positions and, is really taking full ownership of it, which is really nice being a first year principal and being new to the district and the school. Oftentimes, having been an athletic director myself for a long time, people like, well, what do you think? And this and that. And while there's communication, there's not like waiting for me to do things or to tell them what to do, which has been really appreciated. And the passion that he has for the school and athletics, I know is gonna pay dividends for us down the road. And the other coaches that we've hired and put in place are doing a lot of the good things, communicating and trying to get out there and get numbers up and other things like that. And we have really good facilities. There's always room for improvement, but a lot of positives there. I was the athletic director of a 6A high school with one gym. And so when I was taking my tour and I found 3, I was like, oh my lord, this is incredible. So, and yeah.
Thank you.
Glenn?
Not really any questions other than, and this is probably more directed at us, I'm assuming ASB is gonna have representatives here again for meetings like.
Yeah, so with everything that happened at the end of last year, the elections were not held, so they'll be held right at the beginning of the year. And so we're working on that. That's like I said, we were meeting with students today just to talk about some ideas that they had for the year. And then some questions that they had about elections and some other things like that. So, but
Awesome.
yeah, we will.
I always appreciate their interaction with us, so.
Yeah, definitely. Crystal?
I'm good. I just want to say thank you for coming to the board, and I look forward to working with you in the future. And thank you for your presentation. I'm sure I have a laundry list of questions, but I'll run those through Dan.
Sounds good.
Kelsey?
Yeah, I like the visibility, statement that you said that you're gonna do this year too. Excited to get back the school spirit and stuff in around. I think that's needed and exciting. And excited to have you. I think it's gonna be a great year and the future looks good.
Well, I'm excited to be here.
Thanks.
I'm excited to have you too, and Lindsay at the high school too. I think that's gonna be a great support. She knows 75% of the kids already. So, welcome.
Yeah, so I appreciate all the time Nathan put in, I've, told him as many times as he could get here in the spring, and then, quickly he marched himself towards the goal of getting to meet every staff member, which I think, to be able to do that before June or by the middle of June is a significant accomplishment, so thank you for all that time. So Des, on this, where do you wanna be since we're sharing before I launch into the contract renewal and evaluation process, where do you wanna You know, move up front.
Yeah. I have like 2 slides. I feel like I could, like.
You wanna stay there? Okay, alright. Okay, so earlier, this evening, you voted to renew contracts for contract teachers to a 2-year contract. And so, initially I'd planned on giving this presentation in October, but given the timeline of what I asked you to do tonight, the teachers coming back, getting, for contract teachers, getting a 2-year contract, I thought I'd give an overview of, kind of all these terms that we use and that are outlined in statute. So we've got on the opening slide here, probationary status, contract status, renewal, non-renewal, and non-extension. And what does it all mean? And where does evaluation fit into this? So I'm gonna walk you through these terms and how they're outlined in statute. So a licensed probationary period applies to all TSPC licensed employees. So those are our teachers that are licensed. And they serve a probationary period of up to 3 years. So state law requires that they do at least 1 year of probation. A district could shorten it. And now the state legislature did pass a law that says that if a teacher gets to contracts, what's called contract status in the state of Oregon. So let's say a teacher teaches for 5 years in Woodburn. And so by the nature of being 3 years, they achieve contract status, and then they come to us and become a teacher. Their probationary period is maxed out at 2 years. So that is a brand new law that just got passed. That if a teacher achieves contract status in the state of Oregon when they apply to a new district, their max contract is for 2 years. And school districts and school boards, it's just one more thing to keep track of. So it is what it is, it passed, and so it's just one more thing that and the rules I don't think have been written yet to know, like, how do we know, like, where does that come in? And, so a lot of things to figure out. We're actually going to a Garrett Heeman Robertson legislative, like, okay, here's all the new stuff you need to know, meeting this Thursday, so maybe that'll be spelled out for us, so. And so that annual renewal process happens every March by March 15th, so here's what you need to know, for probationary employees, these are 1-year contracts. And the board may non-renew or dismiss a probationary teacher for what's called any cause deemed in good faith sufficient. Which essentially means that it is not based on a performance standard, it is not based on a disciplinary measure, if I were to bring a non-renewal recommendation for you, did I do so basically in good faith? Like, I don't have a false motive or anything like that, is that, essentially it is a pretty low standard for the board to act to non-renew a teacher within the first 3 years in those probationary time periods. And I think what's equally, or is very important to know, is those actions are not subject to grievance or a fair dismissal appeals board. So when the board, if I were to bring a non-renewal to the board approved that non-renewal, that's where it stops. It does not go beyond the local school board any further for probationary. Okay? So makes those probationary periods super important as we get into what happens next. So a contract teacher, so I've linked the ORSs in here, so if you want to go into deep reading there, they're all linked there. And this is what the board did. This states that contract teachers shall be employed by a school district pursuant to 2-year employment contracts. So the state, once they move off of probationary status, they move into where they get a 2-year contract. And that annual renewal that you do every March, another 2 years, another 2 years, another 2 years. Okay, well, let me back up, because it doesn't add on it, but it renews it for another 2 years. Okay, so you're making every March, you're making a 2-year commitment with every employee listed. So what you just did there earlier, you just made a 2-year commitment to everybody on that list.
Wait, I'm going backwards now. I'm just kidding.
Okay, go ahead, Merle.
Is that a mandated requirement, or can you sign a 2-year contract and at the end of 2 years, sign another?
So every March, when you renew, so when those employees get that letter here in a couple of weeks. It'll state that their employment contract is from July 1 of 2025 to June 30, 2027. Next year, they'll get another letter that will say that'll be another 2 years. So same employees, if no action's taken, the same teachers will get a 2-year agreement.
Yeah, I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying. My question though is that a statutory requirement? Or if you sign a 2-year contract, it's a 2-year contract, and you let it run for 2 years and then renew it? Or does it have to be a revolving charge account?
It has to be revolving.
But we have the opportunity,
You can work toward non-renewal.
yeah, you can work towards non-renewal with like a
Okay.
year and a.
So that's what gets
you
to
know,
my next
yeah.
kind of second sub bullet there. So if there were actions to be taken, the action to be taken is in the first year of that 2-year contract is to non-extend that contract.
Mhm.
So that's why all these terms get floated around and no one really knows what they mean, is that. So that if there was a recommendation to come to the board to non-extend a contract. And the board voted to non-extend it, to what you're getting at, is that basically puts that 2-year contract will come to an end.
Mhm.
The following year. Now,
That's essentially the process you're describing. It's just very
I,
specific. in-
I guess, although I think it might be a little different. As it relates to staff morale. If you spend that second year. Doing what's the term, PIA, missing in act, I don't know.
the plan of assistance, or, they're referred to oftentimes loosely as a plan or a plan of assistance. The legal description is a program of assistance for improvement,
So
so.
maybe that's not all bad, I'm just
Yeah.
imagining how that might feel.
Yep.
Going through that second year, with that kind of hanging over your head.
So for a non-extension, it's also written in the statute that a teacher must be on the plan of assistance for the board to vote to non-extend.
Mhm.
Okay, so kind of wrapping up on the next one, next slide. So that ORS outlines the reasons for the non-extension or dismissal of a contract teacher. So basically it says there's 9 reasons why you can either non-extend or dismiss a contract teacher. And so of those, I picked out the one that would be most likely would be an inadequate performance would be the most common reason for the non-extension of a contract teacher's employment contract. So that would be the most common. Here's an important piece is the non-extension, non-renewal. So if we played this out, so in year 1, we non-extend, and if year 2, you voted to non-renew, then that 2-year contract then would come to an end. Or dismissal, all of those are, they can be appealed to the Fair Dismissal Appeals Board. So if the board votes to take any of those actions, there can be an appeal to this board. I've linked all the information about that board, there's 3 people it's actually about 24 people, but for each case is heard by 3 people. A school board member in a district in Oregon, a teacher, and then essentially kind of a community member, somebody not affiliated with the school district. So there would be 3 people that hear that and then would vote to either uphold or reject a board's action. So those are all the steps. So I think it's really important that because sometimes we kind of blow through that March vote and not realize the commitments we're making. And so I think it's really important that we kind of understand these commitments we're making. And so I want to make a connection to the teacher evaluation piece because Well, why don't I go ahead and turn it over to Des, who's been working on this quite a bit.
Sure. So this is just more of a reminder of the teacher evaluation process that we talked about in the spring that has come into place. Teachers, like Dan said, are on one of 3 cycles. They're either in their probationary cycle, which is their first 3 years, or potentially 2 based on the new law. They're in their formative cycle or their summative cycle. When they're in their probationary cycle, they have a minimum of 4 4 observations where principals or administrators are in their classrooms watching the teaching process. They complete a yearly self-evaluation. They set 2 annual student learning and growth goals and 1 professional goal, and they have a yearly evaluation from their supervisor using our evaluation rubric. From there, once they have removed themselves or gotten off of the probationary cycle, their first year is on their formative cycle. And the formative cycle is not as stringent as the summative cycle or probationary. So they gotta get a year on, year off. So during the formative year, they have a minimum of 3 observations. Again, they do a yearly self-evaluation. They set the same goals, 2 student learning and growth goals and 1 professional goal. But their supervisor will not complete a formal evaluation on them. And then once they've completed that year, they move into year 2. Again, a minimum of 3 observations. I will say most teachers get more than that, but 3 are the ones that we have to have as part of our process. They complete a yearly self-evaluation, they do their goal setting, and then again, they'll get their yearly evaluation from their supervisor using the rubric. We talked about this in the spring. They're evaluated on 4 domains. There's standards of practice, planning and preparation, learning environments, learning experience, and principal teaching. And the yearly evaluation, the rubric, is informed by classroom observations of other professional responsibilities, including staff meetings, participation in PLCs, a collection of evidence and examples aligned to the rubric, so samples of their lesson plans, samples of assessments they've done, data we have on, did you collect your grades on time and submit this paperwork on time and complete your professional responsibilities? And then additional evidence that the staff member can provide to us. Because we, as much as we can get into classrooms, we will never see everything that a teacher does on a day-to-day basis.
So leaving that slide up there, so just to kind of want to highlight the 4 domains there. So planning and preparation is kind of the things you don't always see a teacher doing in preparing for lessons. Each of those 4 bullets there, planning, preparation, learning environments, learning experiences, and principal teaching, each have about 6 standards within them. So you can think there's about 24 standards that people are being evaluated on. So learning environments has more to do with, you'd probably see more things about how the classroom feels, how the classroom is run in terms of and how it's managed is what you'd probably see in those learning environments, that particular domain. Learning experiences is probably gonna be more about that direct teaching. What is the teacher doing? What are the kids doing in response to the teacher's teaching? And the principal teaching is probably more of those professional responsibilities, the things that, how they collaborate with others, things like that, that necessarily aren't always as visible in the classroom. And so again, there's about 24 different standards.
22.
22, all right.
There's some of them have like 5 instead of 6.
Yeah, so those are the areas where they are evaluated. So next slide. So board action on teacher contracts serves to validate and certify the effectiveness of its evaluation system. I don't know, I put my initials there because I don't know if anybody quoted that, but that's my quote. So so it's there now. And so I feel like the board, when it takes its action in March, is really validating this process. That if we're bringing you a recommendation to move a probationary teacher or renew them for another year, or move them from probationary to contract, or that we're gonna give somebody another 2-year contract, you're really validating and certifying the effectiveness of the evaluation system. And I actually feel like this is even a better time than in October to bring this up, because we are rolling out this new evaluation system here in 2 weeks with our staff. And with our administrators, and I think I know it's going to be well received. It's, Des has put a ton of work into removing a lot of the barriers that make the system cumbersome and really trying to pinpoint it about feedback. So, I also wanted the board to know that there are multiple steps in place prior to the non-renewal of a probationary teacher's contract. So that doesn't just come before the board in March without our administrators going through a lot of different steps that I require of them before something comes like that to the board. We are really working to document, making sure we're clear with the concerns that we may have before that, and that program of assistance for improvement PIAs will be a training that will take place this year for all administrators. And that those plans are outlined both in statute and collective bargaining agreements with the union. So if we get to a place where we have those things in front of the board, know that they're also very outlined from what I expect of administrators on those. And ultimately, evaluation doesn't necessarily improve teacher performance. Feedback is what improves teacher performance. And so you really gotta remember that the evaluation is kind of the culmination of a lot of these things, but really we're aiming our work on making sure that our principals are giving effective feedback. And in our admin retreat last week, we discussed about the importance of feedback being a two-way street. That if the feedback that a principal gives a teacher is not helpful, that needs to be communicated. And so I've been working with our principals about having almost like their own exit ticket to where after they give feedback after being in a classroom, that they would automatically send the teacher, very brief kind of survey. How effective was this? What could I do to give you more effective feedback? Because I think it's really important that feedback goes up and down the chain of command. It cannot just be a downward process. It has to go up the chain of command as well. And so our principals were really receptive to that idea. I asked them to come up with a proposal that we could entertain, and so evaluation is obviously critically important, but really the only way to improve teacher performance is through effective feedback. So.
Great.
Questions?
Kelsey? Crystal?
I'm good.
All right, I have a question.
Yeah.
On the notion that feedback improves teacher performance, why would we not be doing an evaluation in year one?
So on that, so I think the year piece gets a little muddy. Okay, so if you think about a teacher going from probationary status to contract status, they've had 3 years in a row of full evaluations. So the state law requires that contract teachers, so the people that are non-probationary, that contract teachers get a full evaluation once every 2 years.
Okay.
So these are people that went through 3 years of getting evaluated every year, and now they move into contract status, and now they go on an alternating year as far as the full evaluation piece. Now, that's the minimum. So if we had somebody that, let's say that a principal did their full evaluation, and there were some areas where growth was noted. The principal, and this did happen this last year, the principal said, I'm gonna put you on a full cycle again next year so that we can monitor
Okay,
those things.
so maybe not, you're not bad enough to go into a PIA, but I wanna continue to monitor you
Sure.
kind of thing. Okay,
Yes.
I see.
We can always do more on the full evaluation. The
Okay,
state requires that once you're in contract status, you have to get a full evaluation once every 2 years.
but we could do more if we wanted to.
We could do more if we wanted to, and I would think that at the same time, let's being really strategic though, in terms of, if we have a high performer.
Yeah,
Taking that responsibility off of our principals to do that full evaluation, let's not
agreed,
waste that time,
agreed, yep.
so.
Glenn?
So
I guess maybe a scenario. Maybe a question. This data that we're gathering, because that's a lot of data points and a lot of information. Are we sharing it with future employers ever
What's that
on staff?
what are we required to share?
Like, to like someone who called for a reference.
Yeah, reference can be
You're
pretty
HR
broad.
guy.
Reference can be pretty broad. I didn't know, like, are we, like. Is there any scenario where we're actually sharing documentation? No.
No.
Like that kind of.
No, that's personnel file related, that would be protected.
So then now that we're mandated to do 2 years, I'm assuming we cannot ask for anything still, but just a. I mean, now that we're we have to count. Time served,
Yeah.
we're still at that scenario of just collecting. As we bring in new employees, just either a letter of reference or
Yeah.
something very general.
And it speaks to the importance of those probationary years, especially if they are cut down to 2, because. Having been in other districts and, like anywhere, there are people who move through that process who maybe shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Who suddenly are in contract status and we, the time to make sure we have the right employee at the job is during those probationary years.
Okay.
For sure.
Merle?
If I'm understanding right, you're saying that when it comes to the March time and our decision, that we can have confidence if you're you're not recommending non-extension or non-renewal, or either way, that you've done these steps and that PAI is in place and functioning and working.
Yeah.
In thinking about evaluations, I think Desiree said that this new rubric, this 4 domains or whatever, is less time consuming.
It is less time consuming in that it is better organized and more like streamlined and clear. For sure, but simultaneously, the feedback we've got from teachers who looked at it said it's far more rigorous also. Like the expectations are higher, things where we had teachers say, well, I used to get a 4 on this, but when I look at this, I would score myself a 2. And it's like, okay, well, here's what a 4 looks like, this is how we expect you to up your game.
Well, that's what I had picked up on, is the time consuming is a criticism. And the resources consumed, sort of, those two go together, I guess. And the subjectivity of the system, but it sounds like this one you feel is a pretty good change for us.
It's excellent, yeah, it's absolutely excellent, and part of when Dan talks about the, like 2 long working together at this point. When we talk about the time consuming part, it's not even about the rubric, it is about the old system we put it into, which was called Talent Ed, and that was super cumbersome, because it was just kind of an outdated electronic system that just doesn't work very well. So we've streamlined that also, and that's where a lot of the time is gonna be saved both on the teacher and the administrator, for sure.
I think if it results in better teachers, it's worth it. And
Absolutely.
the ones you brought in that time, I don't know if you cherry picked them or not, but they were positive about it.
Yes, yeah, they were the entire committee, it was strong and mighty.
Okay.
Robert?
I just have a question for Dad.
Blake?
When you talk on the observations, who does those?
Those are principals.
Principals do it, and so just a rough count on the high school, there's 30 teachers. And so what kind of, do they sit through a class? Does the teacher know what's happening? Do they just show up? Can you lay out a little bit of what that looks like? And if you're a teacher, how they're prepped for it, how that feels, and how the principal works, just kind of give us a little.
I mean, there's definitely lots of schools of thought. You don't have to, tell somebody you're coming. And if I.
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, in case those could be spelled out in different collective bargaining agreements, you know, so if I don't have our collective bargaining agreement memorized, so. So you can show up unannounced, you know, and there's not a time, our contract's pretty, you know, generous. It doesn't have a minimum time requirement, and so, I mean, you could do more than 4, you could, you know, in general, I would say at least that 20 to 30 minute being in there, if you're really wanting to kind of see, I would say at least that time. I mean, sometimes there's independent work, and so, you know, the kids are doing, so you know, it might not be the best use of the principal's time to stay in there to see independent work, but kind of depends on what the principal's in there looking for as well. So I think I covered some of those questions.
Right, no, sometimes we gather all this information and then getting that information to the decision makers can be kind of a hard thing to do. And so, once the principals put all that together, who's reviewing and analyzing that?
The principals are, they're the ones that make the final decision, but we do a lot of work to calibrate them. On a couple levels, one is we do walkthroughs together where we then say, what did you see? This is what I saw. We also can look at scores to look for trends. Do we see that this one seems to be scoring people at a pretty high level versus this one's a little harder? Or do we need to calibrate ourselves on that level? The other thing I'll add to what Dan said, part of the reason why we don't tell teachers we're coming is because we want to see what does a day-to-day look like. And for our probationary teachers, because they have 4, one of those is considered a formal observation. They're in for the entirety of the period. They meet with the principal ahead of time and say, this is what you're gonna see, this is what my lesson plan is, and they meet with them after to debrief. The reason why we don't have a ton of formals, because I came from a district where we had like 2 formals a year and 2 or 3 informals, is because when you know your principal's there, you bring out all the dog and pony show, right? And you're gonna use your best tricks, and you're gonna make sure you have the best PowerPoint, and you're gonna use all the bells and whistles. And then we wanna see, but what happens when you didn't know I was coming? And so that kind of mix of like, when do we stop in? Any teacher though can ask for a formal. They can say, tomorrow, I'd love for you to come in and see me. I'm doing this really cool lesson. I'd like for you to come see it. Any of those are always open invitations to teachers.
And I think in our contract, that, you know, like if you got an evaluate or observation and some feedback that you disagreed with, you could say, hey, I'd like Des to come in and take a look, and you can have another administrator come in and take a look at the classroom to kind of, so the teachers can request that as well. And that was one of the things, the pre-observation, or what's, you know, typically kind of called a formal, where you have this mandatory pre and mandatory post, is we really removed those from the contract teachers, because again, it was another thing for the principals to remember, do I have to do that for this one and not have to do that? You know, it's like, just go in the classrooms and give feedback. Like, quit having the mental gymnastics of the things you have to remember to do, just get in the classrooms and give feedback. So we kind of try to remove all this one you have to do at this, and this one you have to do at that.
The other piece I'll add, that the teachers in the evaluation committee actually specifically asked for there to be opportunities for people who weren't their supervisors to come and do observations and contribute to it. So the evaluation at the end, as I said, it's about evidence that we've collected, and that evidence can be the principal, yeah, I saw you teach 3 times, but also, and Dan saw you teach once, and here's what he said, and Desiree saw you teach once, and here's what she said. And we're compiling all that evidence to make an evaluation and place you on the rubric. And the teachers in that team said, we really find it valuable to know other eyes are on our classroom and giving us feedback.
And we've also, some of the feedback I heard, especially towards the end of last year, is that I was not as visible in the classrooms as maybe some would like. And so one of the things that we did for this year in our meeting schedule with principals is Des and I meet with the principals on the 2nd week of every month, and I meet with them one-on-one on the 4th week of every month. And so I've expanded those from an hour to an hour and a half, where the meeting portion with the principals is 45 minutes, and then we go into the classrooms and do 45 minutes of walkthrough. So Des and I will be in classrooms with the principals in each building the 2nd week of every month, and I will be with the principals the 4th week of every month, going into each classroom. So that's a priority of mine to be more present.
Very cool.
Cool.
I haven't worked out with board leadership on the board retreat, but one idea I had was to, within those domains, there's a few that we've had earmarked that are gonna be like high priorities for us this year. And then we would do an exercise with the board at the board retreat to give you kind of the descriptors of those domains and say, what would you expect to see in a classroom with this kind of description? Have the board go through that and then compare what you said you would think you'd see with what our principals said they would be looking for and see. I think that'd be interesting to see what you would expect to see going into classroom on a particular area and compare that to what our principals say. So maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't. All right. Okay. So next on the agenda is I've linked these draft policies. OSBA provided those to us, to all districts. They are not they have not been approved yet. They went to the governor's office to get reviewed. I don't know what's gonna happen there. And so I'm just providing those to you. So that you can know what I know. And I have my notes from the last board meeting. And I'm reading things like, be careful, wait and see. So I'm just following that lead a little bit, and I did meet with Nathan and Lindsay today, and we talked a little bit about, and I think I've mentioned before, the high school is probably the place where the biggest, change is gonna take place, and so Nathan and Lindsay have some ideas of where they think they could go, but they really kind of want their staff input and staff to buy into some of that. I think you'll probably see the high school leaning more towards what the middle schools had. And so I think the wait and see is the path that we're on, but you have what I know.
I have a question on
Yeah.
that. So, and this is probably a question for you. Can you implement some of that stuff basically just without board approval rather than do mid-year changes? Cause I don't want your year to look super chaotic. But this is coming.
Right.
And so I didn't know, I mean, it's pretty late to get ahead of school starting. But I didn't know, I just kind of wanted to go get your feel for.
Well, the way I read the policy, the draft policies, I don't see in the most kind of liberal sense of student access to their devices. I don't see that a lot different than what's been in a lot of schools, okay? So to answer your question, I think that if Nathan and the high school staff say, this is our new cell phone policy, I think we could do that without your approval.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cause
I think if we were to take a more.
I can't speak for the board, but. I would
Yeah.
rather than, come in midstream and change what you guys are already doing. Maybe you wanna start that year out with, you know what I mean, sort of the expectation.
Yeah,
Rather
I think
than-
you'll see an increase in
Rather than take it
expectations.
away, take.
At the high
certain things
school.
away.
I think you'll see some increase in expectations at the high school. I think that, not knowing until OSBA, if that stays, then I think that this process of the board adopting policies will probably not be very difficult.
Yeah.
I think if that comes back and the options are too loose, then we're probably having a different conversation. I don't know, but I think moving the high school closer to what the middle schools had is probably the direction we're going. Yeah. And then we have just the annual updates of what we have going on for staff there during, so we have new teacher orientation, new staff orientation. On the next Friday already, the 22nd. And so, this is where we bring all our new employees in and we turn on the fire hose and then we say, remember all this stuff. So Yeah, it's good though. It's a good chance to connect with them. Amy's here and they'll have a time to meet with new classified employees. UNME is asked to have their new employees, because there's only a tiny group of teachers, and so they've asked for do something the following week. Any questions on that? And then we have the in-service week. Yeah. And so similar to what we've done, so. And then my address will be talking about feedback, the two-way street to greatness. And then, yeah, there you have it.
You're welcome.
I was gonna say, do you want us to come on that?
You're welcome to come.
On that,
Yeah.
okay.
So that welcome back on Tuesday would be great. And Des will be walking people through the new evaluation process, more from a technical standpoint of kind of where they can find the information. And then it'll be a good handoff, because then the principals will take care of it from there the next couple of days, so. So yes, if you'd like to be there Tuesday at 7:45. Be great to see you. Anything else on that, Diane, that we cover? Does that cover it?
Are we good?
Back to school day.
And then back to school nights, Wednesday,
27th.
the 27th. And been working with our principals and collaborating on communication. I know that both primary and intermediate have been collaborating on their communication, so those events go well for families and. Yeah.
Great. Anything else? I'm gonna adjourn this meeting at 7:46.